Hello there, I'm Dave Myers, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. Are you kidding me? A chariot of fire? Pulled by beings in the shape of horses? Driven by spirit beings called horsemen? I'm sure we've all seen some pretty amazing modes of transportation, but none of us have seen anything as spectacular as this chariot of fire, referred to in the Bible as the Chariot of Israel. Yet the Bible tells us that such a vehicle exists, and such beings exist. Every once in a while, God allows the veil that conceals the spirit world to be thrown back. When this happens, mere humans get a glimpse of a mysterious and powerful world that is almost impossible for us to really comprehend. Elisha had this experience when the time came for his master, Elijah, to retire, if you will, from active service as God's main prophet. The baton of leadership would be passed by God from Elijah to Elisha. Today's scripture is 2 Kings 2, verse 11, where we read this. Then it happened as they, referring to Elijah and Elisha, as they continued on and talked, that suddenly a chariot of fire appeared with horses of fire that separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Now, what can we learn from this scripture? Well, we learn that God has created an entire spirit world that is generally hidden from human eyes. This spirit world interacts with the physical world that we're familiar with, and sometimes they actually seem to intertwine. In this case, God sends a spirit chariot through the veil into the physical world. It separates Elisha and Elijah, apparently picks up Elijah and transports him in a whirlwind to another location on earth. Now we know that he did not go to heaven where God dwells, because years later, Elijah comes out of retirement, we might say, and writes a letter to Judah's king Jehoram that's recorded for us in 2 Chronicles 21, verses 12 to 15. The Bible actually teaches that there are 3 heavens. The first heaven is the atmosphere around us, where the birds and planes fly. It's talked about in Genesis 1, verse 20. The second heaven is what we refer to as space, where the planets and stars. That's shown in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 18. And then there is the third heaven, the location of God's throne, the place most people think of when they say, quote-unquote, heaven. This is shown by Paul in 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 2. Now, Elijah was simply taken up into the first heaven by this stunning chariot, and he was dropped at an undisclosed location, we might say, to live out his physical life and serve God in a less strenuous role. How do we know Elijah didn't go to the third heaven to be with God? Because Jesus states in John 3, verse 13 that, quote, no one has ascended to heaven, but he who came down from heaven, that is, the Son of Man who is in heaven. So as Elijah is carried into the sky, his cloak, referred to as his mantle in the Bible, falls down to Elijah as a symbol of God's authority now being passed from Elijah to Elisha. In the way that God was with Elijah, he will now be with Elisha, and even in a greater way. Elisha would go on to produce 14 miracles that are recorded in the Scripture. So, a chariot of fire with horses of fire? We may not ever get to ride in this exquisite mode of transportation, but in learning about it, we can better appreciate the great God who made it.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.